Heads, because it is Lady Liberty on the front.
There you go.
So this coin flip will determine the order for the rest of the night.
In case I drop it.
Okay.
That was a very good one.
Oh, let it fall.
Okay. It's heads.
It's heads.
Okay.
So, what does that mean?
Got that out of the way. Our official coin
Roll is
flip.
going first.
So just to go over a few rules of engagement, coin flip, check. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to open. Questions will be read by our moderator, and then each candidate will have 2 minutes to speak to the question at hand. We'll repeat through the 7 topics, which are equal pay, education, family planning, caring for an aging population, mental health, domestic violence, and the pink tax. And then each candidate will have 2 minutes to close. So within those 2-minute sections, it's really just not it's an expectation of an answer and a thought-provoking presence. It's definitely not an answer to rebuttal or explanation, going backwards or forwards. Just the overall goal of the full evening is for everybody to get a good feel about these topics, learn more about what these issues are facing our state. When we asked for suggestions from our members and guests and on Facebook and through email and through other social media platforms, we got a lot of issues around women's rights, and women's rights are human rights, and so when we consider what affects us, it affects everybody.
That's right.
And more importantly, it affects Arkansans and it affects us in Washington County. And we want to take that effect down to Arkansas, or down to Little Rock. Okay, so before we begin, a guy that really doesn't probably need an introduction, but I'm going to anyway. Y'all probably know him from his strong Twitter and Facebook presence, his constituent events involving various local brews, and he reminds us when to call our elected officials often, how to get connected to our reps on the floor through pink slips, which I don't know that anybody ever knew about until Greg told us all about them and took pictures. Okay, Sarah does. Sarah's smarter than most of us, though, so she's sitting down drinking a glass of wine. He is the current seat holder for District 86, which is why I've asked him to come and read the bios for the candidates seeking that position. And soon he'll be our next state senator for District 4.
Thank you. The luckiest man in Washington County tonight, because first I get to be with y'all here, and two, because I'm not one of the 2 people that's going to be on the hot seat this evening. I do want to say real quick, since you talked about voter turnout and the importance of voting, last time this seat was open 8 years ago. It was also a midterm year, but there was a lot of Democratic action. That was the year that Lieutenant Governor Bill Halter challenged Senator Blanche Lincoln in the primary, so there were plenty of reasons for Democrats to get out and vote. How many people do you think voted in this particular House race with me and my opponent?
425.
425? A little bit more than that. It's only about 1,800 people.
Whoa.
I got more than 1,100 of those votes. It's important to go out and vote. And yes, if you're a Democrat, please vote in the Democratic primary, especially if you happen to be, obviously this is not going to apply to this race, but if you live in Benton County, for the love of God, please vote in the Democratic primary so we can start showing people that there are Democrats. Here this evening, because I am the state representative for District 86, the heart of Fayetteville, I've got the pleasure of introducing our 2 candidates this evening. These introductions are theirs. They each wrote a full-page, single-spaced bio. I would have had to make stuff up when I ran 8 years ago to fill an entire page. But since Nicole won the coin toss, was that correct?
Yes.
All right, let's start with her. Nicole Clowney was born and raised in Oklahoma. She was the daughter of 2 educators. She went to the University of Chicago for college, where she got her degree in classics. Then she went to Yale Law. While she was at Yale, she was editor-in-chief of the Human Rights and Development Law Journal. Yeah, there we go. She went back to Oklahoma after she got her law degree and clerked for Chief Judge Robert Henry on the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. Once she wrapped up her clerkship, she married her husband Steve. They moved to Lexington, Kentucky, where they never ever not once cheered for the Wildcats. While they were there, Nicole worked for for a nonprofit law firm that specialized in children's law, and she also worked on a project that was funded through a grant through the Southern Poverty Law Center that worked to close the school-to-prison pipeline. She and Steve ultimately got jobs that brought them to the University of Arkansas here in Fayetteville. Her husband Steve teaches for law school. Nicole teaches classics at Fulbright College in addition to teaching ancient Greek, Latin, mythology, and law. Okay. About a year ago, she founded the NWA chapter of Moms Demand Action. I'm sure most of you know that's a group committed to reducing gun violence in our country. At the time, there was no organized presence here in Northwest Arkansas. If I could think there was only one chapter, I think that was Little Rock. But the chapter here grew so quickly and grew to the point that it needed to split in two. So we now have a Moms Demand chapter up in Bentonville, which is fantastic. And I think we're up to about a dozen chapters statewide now, which is great. Steve and Nicole have two daughters. Edie is 7. She's a first grader at Washington Elementary. She enjoys practicing the violin and ballet. Kit is 4, and she enjoys chewing bubblegum and running, which, same, I do too. And Nicole's quick to point out that she never lets Kit do both at the same time. When she's not teaching or marching, you can usually find her in 1 of 3 places. She's usually at the Creek at Wilson Park, the Fayetteville Public Library, or the Fayetteville Farmers Market, family always in tow. Mark Kenyon, 6th generation Arkansan, born and raised in Prairie Grove, Arkansas, not too far from here. He grew up with his family on a small farm there, where he was made to do chores that he didn't always appreciate, but he respected the value of them. He went to Prairie Grove Public Schools and the University of Arkansas. For most of his professional life, he was an executive with a pharmaceutical company, and during that time, he traveled to all 75 counties in the state as part of a federal and state program to make sure that kids all over Arkansas were getting important vaccines. That's one reason he believes strongly in making sure that we have strong health care here in Arkansas, and affordable health care, and that people have access to health care. He also does work to make sure that Arkansas Children's Hospital and UAMS have access to affordable medication, working with a local company called PharmaCal. He's formerly a member of the Planned Parenthood Advisory Board. While there, he helped the organization open up the first bilingual full family health clinic here in the area, as well as helped the HIV testing program, and he's also worked closely with the NWA AIDS Crisis Center to help develop compassionate care for AIDS patients here in the region. Also a lifelong advocate for the Buffalo River. At the age of 16, he went to his first committee meeting down at the state capitol in Little Rock to hear advocates and lawmakers discuss a plan for protecting our nation's first national river. Got elected to the city council in 2010. He served since 2011, focused largely on environmental issues, building infrastructure, and expanding civil rights. He listed 12 specific legislative accomplishments. Let's see if I can remember them all. I know there was a streamside ordinance protection issue, worked to expand the number of parks, protect public spaces, close a loophole in the tree preservation ordinance. There was an energy action plan that you helped develop, worked to help the city develop an economic development plan, secured funding for Ozark Regional Transport, secured funding for Seven Hills Homeless Center, helped establish the Town and Gown Committee, which helps the city partner with the university to address issues, co-sponsored the city's non-discrimination ordinance, helped develop the welcoming plan for immigrants in the area, and helped save the city millions by a program where we reissued some water bonds, if I remember correctly. Okay, was that 12? I lost track. We're going to say that was 12, and then I remembered it all. All right, I'm going to get off the stage.
Good?
Yes.
All right. Thank you to both of you for being here tonight. I'm just going to jump in. We're starting with our first topic, which is equal pay.
Are we doing an opening first?
Opening first. Sorry,
I'm
yes.
sorry.
I mean, I'm ready. Let's go. All right, just make sure.
Hold on a second. Okay, yes, opening remarks, as the slide says. Are you ready?
Ready.
Go.
All right, I started in Oklahoma. I ended up in Arkansas, and as you just heard, I did a lot of things in between. My career path has not been typical, but I've always been a very hard worker, and I've always loved a challenge. When my husband and I showed up in Lexington, Kentucky, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but nobody there knew me. And it turns out you can't just walk into a law office in central Kentucky, holding your Yale law degree, thinking you're hot stuff, and get hired on the spot. But it's a good thing I love a challenge. I made the decision then to defer my student loan payments, and I wanted that job so badly that I volunteered for the nonprofit to convince them how badly I wanted to do that work. Luckily, they were convinced pretty quickly and brought me on full time, and it was a great job, but I made just enough to pay my student loans back. And then I got pregnant. And then I had to do the calculus that so many of us in this room have had to do. Do I stay working at this job that doesn't pay me very much money in order to, when I'm gonna have to add childcare onto my already sort of burdensome family, my tightly stretched family budget? For me, the answer was yes. I stopped practicing the law and I stayed home with my daughter. And I still don't know if that was the right decision, but I do know that we owe our Arkansas women more than to have to make decisions like that. I bring that up tonight to this room of Democratic women because I think that story will resonate with a lot of you. Because for many of us, our career paths don't look a certain way. They don't fit a certain mold, but they do say a lot about us. I've been a lawyer, a stay-at-home mom, a teacher, and an organizer. What led me to do those jobs is the same thing that leads me to run for office now, which is my belief that where you start should not determine where you are able to go. My background has given me experience in relationships both here at home and across the country that have opened my eyes and broadened my horizons immeasurably. I am so excited to share with you tonight how my experience has prepared me to be the type of legislator that I think Arkansas needs.
Okay, good. I am ready. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. A lot of y'all already know who I am because I've been around for a while. And I love Democratic women. I love that my friend Ruth Collier went to an early meeting when I came here, gave me a pin that said, the women are the life of the party. And this is true, at least in my life. We've had a very strong family, and I was raised here in this area, and I was very fortunate for that. But it was the matriarchs in our family that made a difference. And the main reason was because they pushed education, and they knew that education was the opportunity that I would be faced with for a better life. My mom, who did not graduate from high school, did open the first kindergarten in Prairie Grove because she knew the importance of early childhood education. I started attending early childhood education practically out of the womb because it was in our house. But indeed, the secret, as Michelle Obama said, is education, and it was pushed on me by the women, the matriarchs in my family, and I owe them so much that they were always there to protect me and always there to give me inspiration. I do have a great deal of experience, both corporate experience, life experience, and government experience that I'm bringing to this position, and I'm ready to hit the challenges in front of me from day one when I get to Little Rock. I'm familiar with the government process, both as a corporate executive that had to deal with corporate activity and through the government process. So if you want to look at good experience, I hope that you'll consider voting for me for this job. Send me to Little Rock. Thanks.
Gender, citing in Clark that collecting this type of data that would help investigate complaints and flag pay disparities for further inquiry was just too difficult and would prove inaccurate in the long run. So what would you propose at a state level that Arkansas do to ensure wage equity?
Yeah, so we all agree in this room, I'm sure, that equal work deserves equal pay. And the gap doesn't just affect women, as you say. The gap affects everybody who relies on women's wages in their family, and it also impacts people of color more intensely than it affects white women. So these are all things that we need to keep in mind when we are addressing this on a state level, which, as you say, we've got to do. So there are a number of things that we can do. First, we can craft legislation that makes it harder for employers to sort of squirm out of the requirements of the Federal Equal Pay Act. Under the Arkansas law as it stands, you are required to provide equal pay for equal work. Equal work is the standard. But that gives employers a lot of room to wiggle around and say, well, these two jobs that this man and this woman are doing are not in fact equal. They can find a very small difference to make them unequal. We need to shift, as some states have done, to what's called a comparable work standard. That makes it harder for employers to get away from the requirements of equal pay. That's one thing we can do. Another thing that we can do is make sure that our laws protect workers so that they're able to talk about their wages, Transparency is key to making sure that our equal wage laws are enforced. So that's the other thing that we have to do. I've lost my timer. There she is. Finally, we've got to create harsher penalties for employers who violate equal wage protections. So in Arkansas, often employers are not punished more harshly than a $500 fine. That means that employers, it's just simply too easy to violate the law. They can break the law, and then when they get caught, pay that fine. But typically they won't get caught, and so those employers come out ahead even if they routinely break the law. Those are just 3 ideas of things we could do at the state level, but it absolutely needs to be addressed.
All right, Mark, the same question to you. Do you want me to repeat all of that, or just?
I think I've got it.
Okay.
79 cents on a dollar, everyone knows what that means, right? That's what women get paid compared to men for doing the same job. And we just have an outline of the way that people get around in reporting equal pay. Something that I found a little bit disturbing is when Representative Fred Love introduced House Bill 1021 to the state legislature here a couple of years ago, there was not one single Democrat that co-signed that bill, and there wasn't a Senate co-sponsor, so it was never discussed. It is this kind of bill, exactly as Nicole said, that is going to require better reporting. The employee cannot be discriminated against if they request a review for equal pay. It's this type of legislation that will allow an employee to talk to other employees to be sure that they're being compensated justly. And this is what we've got to work toward. And again, I want to go back to ERA. Just by passing ERA, we would be the 36th state, I do believe, and we need 38 to get it ratified in the United States. This is going to set a real foundation for equality across all issues that impact women. And so, one thing that I vow to you tonight, one, I'm going to work on an equal pay type legislation the best I can, but we're in the minority. But I also have an unapologetic and serious commitment to move forward with the ERA. Let us be the 36th state to get this passed so that we can recognize women as equal.
The next question is on the topic of education. Act 832 of 2015 recently repealed required testing of students who participate in homeschool. Furthermore, the law does not give the Arkansas Department of Education or the school district the authority to review or monitor a homeschool student's work. There are no educational requirements for parents or guardians who provide homeschool for their child or children. As Arkansans continue to have more and more options for education, from homeschool to charter schools, etc., how would you work to ensure all children are getting adequate education?
Sorry, point of order. The point of did determine that Nicole was first.
We're not going back and forth first.
Really?
That's the way we said it.
Hey, I'm cool with it. We're cool. I think just traditionally, you know.
Yeah, it does.
Let's stick with the way they had the point clip.
Okay.
Do you want to read
No, I think I'm set. Yeah, just want to make sure we're all okay. Everybody okay in here? Okay, good. All right, let's go. Right, so as I say every time I talk, the future of our state depends upon a well-funded system of public education. To me, that means 2 things. One, we have got to stop the tax cuts that Governor Hutchinson started a few years ago. The legislators started before him. That's just robbing our schools of money. But second, we have to spend the money that we do have to go toward public schools, not private schools. And our public schools do need more funding, but I don't want to be too dark about the state of public schools because a lot of things are going well. Teachers are innovating like they always do. They are making do for their students more than we will ever be able to quantify, but think about what they could do with more. I firmly believe that in order to give students in Arkansas equal access to education, We have to make teaching a profession that is more respected, more attractive, and more sustainable to the best teachers in the state. My mom dedicated her entire career as a teacher in Oklahoma, and I saw how much more she was than a teacher. I saw that she broke her back daily for those students, and I saw that what she received in return from the state was criminal. In Arkansas, we've seen a 56% drop in people entering teacher training programs since 2009. 56% drop, and this lines up pretty well with legislative decisions to cut funding, right? So who can blame them at the end of the day? I don't know many teachers who are in it for the money. I don't know many teachers who are in it for the glory. They deserve more of both. The future of our state depends upon strong public schools, and having strong public schools depends upon our making teaching an attractive and sustainable profession for public school teachers in Arkansas.
I agree. I believe if I understood the question, it was about making certain that our students that are homeschooled or they're in an alternative school situation are being held to the same standards of those students that are in public school. First of all, let me say that I am so proud to know that we do have standards for our public school. We do have to have good funding for our public schools, all the way from preschool through higher education and technical schools. We do have to pay our teachers a living wage so that we can recruit the smartest and the brightest, most caring individuals into the profession. But what I do not like seeing, and we're all faced with this, and you hear my word, this is my word, they make fun of me in my campaign office, the tomfoolery that allows vouchers to siphon off money from public schools to go into private education that has no accountability. In fact, it has an alternative agenda. I'm always reminded of what Horace Mann said, and this was over in elementary school in Little Rock when I first saw him. It's, education is the great equalizer. It's the balanced wheel of the social machinery. If we're really interested in equalizing opportunity, and we're really interested in making sure that we have social machinery that works for our state, we have to demand quality standards for all persons that are in an educational situation here in our state of Arkansas, whether it's in a private school, a public school, or homeschool, and that way we know if we're meeting those standards and we're preparing our future workforce and our future citizens for a good quality of life.
Moving on now to family planning. Based on 2017 data, the infant mortality rate in Arkansas is 7.5 deaths per 1,000 live births. The U.S. infant mortality rate is 5.8 deaths per 1,000 live births. With these numbers, Arkansas has the 6th highest infant mortality rate in the nation. How can Arkansas do better to ensure safe deliveries and adequate care for infants and those who care for them? And what would you do in your new role to help guide our state?
Wow, I had not heard those statistics until today, so thank you for that. Yeah, those are shocking numbers, and I think that we know that things like teen pregnancy, we all know those statistics. We know that teen pregnancy is a huge problem in the state of Arkansas, and I am sure that if you dig into those infant mortality numbers, much of it has to do with access to prenatal care. So many of our young people who are getting pregnant, so many of our people in rural communities who are getting pregnant, and so many of our poor do not have access to the adequate health care they need and they deserve to have a healthy pregnancy with a good outcome. We have got to do better in our state. That begins with training doctors, which means that cuts to UAMS and other teaching hospitals in the state have got to go, right? We've got to make sure that we have a well-trained healthcare workforce to prepare for those births. But it also means that we have to empower our young people to protect themselves. And that means a system of comprehensive sex education in our schools. Abstinence-only education only results in young people who do not understand how to best make good decisions, how to protect their health and well-being, how to build the lives they want for themselves, and how to prevent exactly the kinds of outcomes that you just described. So, thanks.
I'm well aware of these statistics because, as mentioned, at one point in my career, I went from county to county with our Public Health Association, dealing with public health crisis in rural counties. What I was working on is establishing a very well-funded vaccine for children's program that was a federal program, and it was not well established in the state of Arkansas. And I guess one of my favorite awards, and I mentioned this humbly and don't boo me, is that Mike Huckabee had to present with me, to me, a Public Health Association award for the service that we did in those counties. It was hilarious because he didn't support the program. But anyway, regardless, we have to continue funding our healthcare system so that there is adequate healthcare for a young family that's just starting out. My parents were 16 when they got married. They really did not have good information. My mom laughs about it a lot now, but it's behind the tears because, boy howdy, she could have used a little bit more information. Couldn't we all, right? And she wouldn't mind me saying it because if she were able, she would be up here saying the same thing. Comprehensive sex education all the way. No shame, no stigma, no religious paradigm thrown in for actions that doesn't work. I'm a scientist, and I might not always come off really emotional because I like the numbers, and the numbers do not lie. We have to do better here in the state of Arkansas, not only for prenatal, where's my time? Prenatal health, but also for access to all health for families and family planning, because this is probably the most urgent need that we see in our rural areas. I've got 10 seconds. Be assured that when I get to Little Rock, I will do everything I can to protect funding to organizations like Planned Parenthood, to our AHEC clinics, to our rural health clinics, so that people can have good health care.
Okay, these next few questions are a bit long, so bear with me, okay? This is, on the topic of caring for an aging population. Between 2010 and 2016, 93.3% of the counties in Arkansas saw their population base grow older. This is in line with the cross-country trend, stating that the number of people reaching retirement will double by the year 2030. To live with a measure of independence and dignity, these aging baby boomers will need a wide range of professional health and social service expertise, as well as home care and residential support and services. This, of course, is not only expensive, it also takes the time and commitment of boomers' children, taking them away from jobs and other responsibilities. So the question is, how can we, as a state, provide support to community members in providing care both at the beginning of life and as our loved ones will begin to need care?
Yeah, thank you. So I like the way that you asked that question because you're exactly right. Caring for an aging population requires two things. It requires caring for physical health and well-being, and it also requires ensuring that this population is receiving things that will allow them to live the independent, productive lives they deserve to live. So with respect to the first, how do we provide for their physical health and well-being? One answer that I think our state should look at very closely is telemedicine. So for those of you who don't know, telemedicine is the use of telecommunications like video conferencing or phone calls in order to make doctor's visits, in order to receive your health care. There's a scientist at the U of A, a researcher at the U of A has found 2 to 3 telemedicine visits are 90% as effective as 20 regular doctor visits for any given patient. Arkansas, however, right now our state law is notoriously hostile to this kind of telemedicine, to this kind of telehealth care. In a state like Arkansas, where so many of our aging patients are rural, think of the difference that this could make in their lives and in their health care. So that's one thing that I would really like to pursue. But again, this conversation needs to be about more than healthcare, because we need to think about how to make sure that people who are in their later years are still allowed to maintain their independence for as long as possible. We need improved public transportation in our state so that people can continue to get around when they stop driving. Additionally, the state could be doing more to foster volunteer or work programs that take advantage of these folks' skills and use them in hospitals or schools where we so badly need additional staff. Right? These are just some suggestions for how we'd accomplish that. But we have to ensure that our aging population has access to health care and is able to live independent, dignified lives that they deserve to live. Thanks.
Another issue that hits close to home. My mom has recently been admitted to a skilled nursing facility. My dad died a little bit unexpectedly, and surprising to us, he had really socked away a lot of cash, and on his deathbed, and I'm not exaggerating here, I was in Little Rock with him, he said, "Don't put your mom in a nursing home." That's a tough thing, if I get chucked up. It's not a decision that you make lightly. But the bottom line is affordability and affordable home health care to keep people at home. And then once they get into the facility, her number one fear is running out of money and not knowing what to do about it. So, bottom line, we've got to be sure that there's funding for and care for our elderly. We do have something known as the Healthcare Arkansas Aging Initiative, but it's inadequately funding. This is funded through the tobacco money, and it started centers, 8 regional centers for the older population for good health, good education, and good health. The Schmeiding Center is one of the centers. It works on recruiting medical professionals that are specifically certified to deal with the aging. And we've got to continue that type of program. I love the telemedicine idea because other states are doing it. But a lot of people do depend on these rural health clinics and funding, and we've got to maintain that to have the dignity of our aging population. Thanks.
All right, our next topic is mental health. As a part of the Arkansas Department of Human Services, the Division of Behavioral Health Services ensures mental and behavioral health care is available to children throughout the state. Outpatient mental health services are available through certified community providers, and as such must comply with state requirements that meet nationally accepted standards for delivering services. The Child and Adolescent Service System Program, also known as CASSP, was established in Arkansas by Acts 964 and 1517, creating 14 child and adolescent service system program facilities statewide to develop plans of care for children and adolescents with serious emotional disturbance. Ozark Guidance is the CASSP facility for Northwest Arkansas, serving Benton, Washington, Carroll, and Madison counties. Some CASSP facilities service as many as 10 counties, and then some service only 1 county. So how would you work to ensure adequate funding is available to increase the number of CASSP facilities so that they are more accessible for all Arkansas children and families?
Thank you. So this question is very near to my heart. The work that I did as a lawyer was in Kentucky. It was not in Arkansas. And that work was representing children who had been disproportionately punished because they had a disability. And usually that disability was some sort of emotional or behavioral health issue. They were not being properly diagnosed and instead were being punished. And programs like Ozark Guidance have done so much for people in this part of the state especially in making sure that their underlying issues are treated. One of the things that we can do to increase funding for these kinds of programs is a program like what we have done in Washington County. So Washington County has the real opportunity to be a leader statewide here. What we do in Washington County is groundbreaking in terms of diverting children who are currently in the juvenile justice system and diverting them so that they are not in detention centers, but are instead in care facilities or receiving outpatient care in order to treat the mental or behavioral health issues underlying their behavior problems, the offenses that they've encountered. If we can partner statewide with the court system and work out funding that takes money and puts it into making those kids a short-term investment, into making sure that those kids receive the mental health care that they deserve and the mental health care that will ensure they are able to live successful, productive lives, even if they have made mistakes growing up. We've got to address those problems at the root. Putting them in juvenile correctional facilities is putting a Band-Aid on the issue, and it will not do anything to solve our state's long-term problems. Getting at these mental health issues that way, when kids are young, will do a lot to make sure that our older population has services that they need sooner. Thanks.
That was more than 2 minutes asking about a
Do you want me to start from the top?
question. Sure.
Okay.
And tap dance.
Do what?
Tap dance.
Okay, so as a part of the Arkansas Department of Human Services, the Division of Behavioral Health Services ensures mental and behavioral health care is available to children throughout the state. Outpatient mental health services are available through certified community providers, and as such must comply with state requirements that meet nationally accepted standards for delivering services. The Child and Adolescent Service System Program was established in Arkansas by Act 964 and 1517, creating 14 Child and Adolescent Service System Program facilities statewide to develop plans of care for children and adolescents with serious emotional disturbance. Ozark Guidance is the CASSP facility for Northwest Arkansas, serving Benton, Washington, Carroll, and Madison counties. Some CASSP facilities service as many as 10 counties, some service just 1 county. So how would you work to ensure adequate funding is available to increase the number of CASSP facilities so that they are more accessible for all Arkansas children and families?
Well, I guess the way you ensure it is you go and you make sure that whenever you're doing appropriations that you're taking care of those critical services such as this in the appropriations process. And I do have experience in line item appropriations that I would be happy to take and work on this. I know the importance of this. Can you imagine if you were one of these rural clinics, you had a child that was experiencing some trouble, or you were a teacher, an educator, and one of your students you knew really needed some help, that there were a 10-county-wide area that are depending on the services of one clinic? Think about that a minute. That means someone's not getting any help. It's not just funding these clinics, but we have a drastic shortage of mental health providers in the state of Arkansas. So in addition to funding the clinics, we've got to staff the clinics. And in these rural areas, it's especially hard to staff the clinics. And again, I saw it back when I was traveling all the counties. So we have to be sure that there's incentive and payout to the individuals that are going to be offering the support services to keep these clinics staffed. It all comes down to budgeting, the values that you take to the appropriations process, partnerships with private entities, because if you can collect from private entities to help support your services, just like they do at Ozark Guidance Center, then you can expand services also. So it's partnerships, appropriate funding, government oversight to be sure that there's access, and this is what I would take as my values and my commitment to you when I go to Little Rock. Thanks.
All right, our second to last topic is domestic violence. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men are impacted by domestic violence every day in the United States, and the numbers reflect similarly here in Arkansas. Arkansas Act 577, passed last year, empowers and protects the rights of victims by laying out a clear process for victims to gain exclusive control of their wireless device, billing information, and account. This helps domestic violence survivors who share a phone plan with their abuser keep it separate from their abuser. Before, cell phone providers couldn't separate the plans without consent from the account holder. With a shared account, abusers were also able to track their victims and who they were talking to. What else can Arkansas do to better help those in abusive relationships seek help, remain safe, and ultimately, how can our state help get our community members out of the cycle of abuse?
So Arkansas, a report came out recently that said Arkansas is 6th in the country for women being murdered by men. We've got to do better. And the research shows clearly that when legislatures have more women in office, laws protecting victims of domestic violence are stronger. And those are victims of domestic violence who are men and women, by the way. So a majority of the women who are murdered by a man, by the way, are murdered by a man using a gun. Gun violence prevention is, as many of you know, something I've spent a lot of time thinking about and advocating for in the last few years. So we need red flag laws like the ones that are about to be introduced. Those laws flag certain people as being a substantial threat to themselves or to others, and then can remove firearms temporarily. It's a good solution, but it's temporary. We need something more permanent too. We need tighter laws when it comes to keeping guns permanently out of the hands of domestic abusers. And we need to do more to ensure that the laws that we do have on the books about firearms are enforced. But as you say, whatever policies we take on, we have to make sure that we are empowering survivors of domestic violence to come forward and get help. In addition to the kinds of legislations that the question asked, one concrete way to do this is by using landlord-tenant laws. So in about half the states in the country, a tenant can terminate a lease without penalty if they are the victim of domestic violence or stalking. Right, that means that it's harder for victims, in Arkansas they don't, Arkansas is not one of those states. So in Arkansas, it is harder for victims to get away from their abusers if they don't have extra money, either to lose their security deposit or to pay more money to rent another place. We've got to make it easier for victims to break the cycle. Allowing them to terminate a lease is one way to do that. But most importantly, we have to take the burden off of survivors and put it onto perpetrators where it belongs. We have to teach our children to recognize violent behaviors in themselves, and we have to teach them that the responsibility is theirs and theirs alone to refrain from those behaviors.
Because I think most of us do know someone or have been in some way impacted by domestic violence. And there is so much stigma associated with domestic violence that it's hard for people to report, it's hard for people to get out of the situation they're in. The question was specifically, what? Let me go to the last one.
What else can Arkansas do to better help those in abusive relationships?
First of all, we do have to have stronger legislation to prevent guns in the hands of perpetrators of violent crime and abuse of their spouses or their dating partners. One thing that was mentioned by Nicole that is most troubling is this stalking loophole. A lot of times, if you're married in a traditional sense, you can get protections that you can't if you're dating, and there is not a way to get away again from your home without breaking a lease and being penalized if you're being stalked. I think the most important thing we can do right now is look and see what we have on the books to be sure that we're disarming perpetrators of violent crimes and domestic violence, as in it's required by federal law but not state law. They should not have arms, they should not have ammunition. And we also must get these red flag laws passed and enforced. It's imperative. And bottom line, we need to work on the problem. We need people to be accountable for anything that they are doing that is violence against a domestic partner. And it's in all sorts of society. In any situation where there are couples, whether it's same-sex, opposite sex, our trans community is so impacted by violent crimes and domestic violence, and they have the double duty of stigma. We've got to be there to hug them, to hold them, and support them.
All right, our final topic this evening is the pink tax. There are 12 states where feminine hygiene products are not taxed under a state's base sales tax. Arkansas is not one of those states. This is commonly known as the pink tax and is something that about half of the population is subject to. During the last 2 years, a number of states have considered removing feminine hygiene products from their sales tax bases. In some cases, arguments have focused on equity concerns, arguing that feminine hygiene products are necessities and should be exempt. How would you address a bill presented to exempt feminine hygiene products as a part of the base state tax in Arkansas?
Yes, absolutely, thank you. So living as a woman and as a mom of 2 daughters, when they're not chewing bubble gum and running around, they're asking me to buy them things. So I know about the pink tax all too well. And I know that when they get older, the pink tax, the tampon tax as we call it, is going to affect our lives in a realistic and substantial way. So in Arkansas, as you say, feminine hygiene products aren't considered necessary under our tax code. That means, to be very clear, that under our tax code, having a period is considered a luxury. That's what it means. Yeah. As a point of contrast, by the way, erectile dysfunction medications are tax exempt in all states but one. So think about that, right? So absolutely, we should make feminine hygiene products tax exempt under Arkansas state law. We're living in a moment where people who have something to contribute are ready to jump down from the stands and jump into the arena and get to work. So now, after 6 months working on the campaign, as the election is looming very close to us now, I'm not afraid anymore. Instead, what I am is so proud of the campaign that we have run. I am so excited for voting to start soon, and more than anything else, I am so grateful. I am so grateful to those of you in this room who have invested in this campaign, whether that's been putting a sign in your yard, a significant financial contribution, or cooking meals for our family. And I am so grateful, eternally grateful to the team of volunteers that shows up every day to work so hard on this campaign. I am so proud of the people who are working on this campaign. If you haven't had the chance to meet them yet, I'm excited for you to. They represent the very best of Fayetteville. And I'll tell you that what I find even more exciting than that is that a lot of these people have never been involved in the political process before, but they're involved now because things feel different. People know that we need legislators who are going to think critically, work hard, and be able to frame their arguments in a way that makes them appealing to a broad range of folks. People know that we could do with a few more women down in Little Rock, and people know that it's time for new, bold leadership. I am so grateful for the people in this room and in this town who have seen those things in me. It has meant so much to me that people in this community have been overwhelmingly gracious in their faith in me to do this job. And it would mean so much to me to be able to serve Fayetteville in this role. I promise we will continue to work so hard every day until the last vote is cast, May 22nd. Thank you.
Nicole, welcome to the lovely life of running for office. I mean, really, this, you are running a great campaign, darn it. But it's very tough to run a campaign, and I also have so many people that think, I've been running a campaign now for 6 years straight, and if you think they're not burned out a little bit, I think they are, but they're still there. But the reason I'm here is because I do have a deep commitment to the people here in this town, in this region of the state, in this district, in the state of Arkansas, all of Arkansas, because the state legislature does impact all the state, not just the corner in which they live. And we live in a very prosperous corner that is somewhat shielded from the disparities of other parts of the state. I am here to ask for your vote because I'm prepared. And I don't know that I ever knew that I would even be to this point in a political career. I started simply as a community activist, knowing that things had to be changed and knowing that I had the time to do it. Then I became president of my neighborhood association. I got on a lot of boards that I really felt were important, such as Planned Parenthood, Humane Society of the Ozarks, others. Then there was an opportunity to run for city council, and I've got to tell you, my experience on city council has been wonderful, and it has prepared me in so many ways. And now I have the opportunity to take that experience, both government, political, budgeting, and take it to Little Rock with my commitment to serve you, everyone here, regardless of gender, social status, sex, age, anything. I will represent you in Little Rock, and we will move forward fairly and earnestly and with a fight that will not quit.
Y'all can exit stage
Left.
There's a stair over there, yes. But thank y'all both so much. Mark and Nicole for being